My first run-in with jiu-jitsu was when I went to California in LA. A bunch of guys are rolling in the grass. I'm like, oh, they're grappling. One guy is in mount and I'm like, do the shoulder lock, put your hands like this and whatnot. And the guy's like, you know jiu-jitsu? I'm like, I don't know what that is, but this is a shoulder lock and this is a chicken wing and, this is how you get on top of the guy. Right. And so it's like, yo, that's jiu-jitsu. I'm like, no, man, this is karate. And so, so again, like I was just ignorant to the art. I just knew what I knew. But then later when I went to college, I was rolling with some guys and they introduced me to what jiu-jitsu is like an art. But the thing that always struck me was that whenever I would roll with somebody who did jiu-jitsu purely, if they were a blue belt or higher, I'd always get submitted. And so, and partly because within the school that I was training, we did grappling, but we were allowed to do a little bit of striking, right? Like, how do you get somebody to open the guard? You hit them a few times and the guard loosens up.
That's how I pass. I pass. What do you do when you're not doing jiu-jitsu or making cool videos?
So for my day job, is basically, I work in marketing management and multimedia production, but more, nice. The multimedia stuff is more so, in the scope of marketing and sales. So,
okay.
Yeah. So basically producing sales stuff that would be then, that would serve as sales collateral or marketing and branding collateral, basically.
Right. Cool, man. That's really cool. And so how did you end up going from, you were in Jersey and you ended up in Dallas? Was that for work or was that like a cultural move? Was that a money move? Like what made you
Yeah. So, my parents came to the USA. I was born in India, right? So I was less than 2 years old. They brought me over. We spent my childhood in Manhattan where my dad was doing his master's. Then later moved to Jersey. Growing up, went to 9 different elementary schools because we moved around a bit. When I got to high school, parents bought a house. So I went to high school in Paramus, New Jersey in the north. Then went to Montclair State University. Worked full time while going to school. So took 7.5 years to graduate. By the time I finished.
How many years?
7.5.
Damn. That is impressive, dude. I'm not kidding, bro. That's impressive.
I don't know if it's impressive or not. For me, it was just like, because I went to my first 2 semesters. I did really bad because I just couldn't handle like 5 classes at once, In fact, I got to a point where they actually kicked me out of the school. I basically flunked out and they told me like, look, you got to go bump up your grades at a different institution and then come back. And so I did. It's funny though, because I actually made the dean's list at the community college. And
wow.
Yeah, so but then when I came back, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do 1 or 2 classes a semester, take my time. That way, when I graduate, I don't have any student loans or anything like that, which was a blessing.
Smart.
And when I finished, I got a job out of DC. So that's why I came down to DC for a bit. I was there for almost 4 years and worked with a few different companies. And then one of the clients that I'd been on and off with wanted to kind of bring me on a larger capacity. So after I got laid off of my last job in DC, I hit them up and they're like, all right, so we would like to bring you on a larger capacity, but we would need you to be in Houston. So that's when I made the move in 2015 thing is, I came to the boondocks of Houston, which is, I guess, jurisdictionally it's Houston, but it's like, I feel like it's the equivalent of like being in Sacramento, but saying you're in San Francisco.
Right.
And so after a couple of years of that, I was like, nah, man, I'm going to Houston proper. And so I did. Right. And I've been in Houston proper for maybe a couple of years now. And but the thing is, the work that I have got going on, because of different clientele and even with the folks that I'm working with right now, They have folks in Dallas, Orlando, and whatnot, and a few other cities. So as a result, I end up having to travel to fulfill those,
Right.
fulfill that work.
Dude, that is really cool. That is an impressive story, by the way. That is really cool.
What's the impressive factor? It's just me trying to make it work.
No, I hear you, man. I hear you. But I mean, like, you know, it's just, I think the deal is, I mean, the cliff notes of my life are, you know, I'm a writer by trade or by nature.
Yeah.
I started writing in 1987. I started writing my high school newspaper, and I interviewed Eazy-E before he blew.
Okay.
And I became friends with Eazy. 2 years later, became friends with Pop before he blew, and I was one of the first West Coast writers for a lot of the early hip hop mags.
So you're doing this right out of high school?
Yeah, I was writing in high school. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, you know, I was a rap journalist before rap journalism was even a profession.
I didn't even know it was a thing until you told me.
Yeah. And then so that's what I did for most of my young life. Around 2006. Well, I've been training with House Gracie and Charles Gracie, and then I saw a lot of overlap between chess and jiu-jitsu, and so I started putting together this org that was kind of based around this fusion of hip-hop, chess, and jiu-jitsu. And then I converted to Islam in 1990.
Okay.
Where I was just on my own studying, and another martial artist who went to Juma down the street from where I lived in San Jose at the time brought me the tapes, the Sirah tapes of Hamza Yusuf. And I was like, there's a biography of the Prophet Muhammad?
Oh, nice. Okay.
And my friend was like, yeah, like at this time I've been Muslim for like a decade. And he was like, you didn't know? In any case, I went through the Sirah tapes, got blown away, read the Sirah, and by this time, I'm going to see Sheikh Hamza or Imam Zaid whenever I can. I'm still training jiu-jitsu, and then there was another brother that me and Imam Daoud both knew, and at one of his dinners, that's how he and I met.
Okay.
He had still lived on the East Coast at that time. And then when he went back, I was going to Zaytuna Institute before it was a college, whenever I could.
Okay.
You know, so there would be different talks and stuff like that. And then once the college started, Imam Daoud, I didn't know, had come out here. And then he called me and he was like, yo, I would like you to be the instructor for jiu-jitsu at Zaytuna.
Okay.
And I was like, are you sure? Because I'm a purple belt.
Okay.
And he was like, yeah, I'm sure. And I was like, okay, I just kind of want to reiterate that the Bay Area is a Shark Tank of jiu-jitsu. And
like West Coast in general.
And, say again?
I would say West Coast in general is just like so many practitioners.
Yeah, it's a whole Shark Tank, bro.
Yeah.
From San Diego to San Fran to Sacramento, we got nothing but killers out here.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, I'm not the illest, but I'm, you know, I ain't afraid of nobody, but I'm, you know.
How long ago was that?
He was like 4 years ago.
Okay.
And so he was like, no, he goes, because, you know, inside this organization, this nonprofit that I ran, I wrote a book called Bobby Bruce and the Bronx, and it connects the connection of hip hop and chess, and it connects chess to jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And he was like, you know, you talk a lot about nonviolence and philosophy, and that's what our students need. It's not just the jiu-jitsu. They need the philosophy of nonviolence. They need, you know, I connect a lot of intercultural aspects to my jiu-jitsu and spiritual traditions.
Right.
And so he was like, I really want you on. And so he brought me in, and we just been rocking ever since. You know what I'm saying? And so right at that time, I got my brown belt. Like literally, like I was just about to tell my instructor that I'm going to start working at Zaytuna, and he gave me a brown belt, like, before I could even tell him.
Okay.
I was like, what? So, you know, I mean, I should have been black a long time ago. I started training with, you know, me, Dave Camarillo, BJ Penn.
Oh, wait, Dave Camarillo, he's the author of Submit Anyone, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So me, Dave, BJ Penn, all those guys, we all started together.
Okay.
But the difference was because I was a family man, like my son was born right when I started taking jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And so I always swore, because I didn't have any MMA or even Mundial aspirations. I didn't even know what the Mundial was. I just wanted to keep my family safe and be fit. Like,
right.
That was it. So, like, I was moving. My progression in jiu-jitsu was unusually slow because I didn't care. And what I mean is, like, I wanted to get better, but never more than I wanted to be with my son
right.
or my daughters.
Right.
And so I would go blue belt. Okay, chill for a minute. Purple. Okay, chill for a minute. Brown. You know what I mean? And I would always like chill.
Whenever you came back in between your breaks, did you did you experience like, oh man, I lost some of it, or was it like riding a bike for you?
It was both.
Okay.
It was both. Like on a certain level, like I feel like every belt level, there's a certain level of clarity that I always make sure that I maintain. I won't be a killer, but like you're never gonna roll with me and just be like, damn, that dude, he was a purple belt.
Okay.
Like, nah, bro, you're gonna feel it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I may not be the sharpest, right? I may not be the sharpest or the hardest, but you gonna know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even now, I mean, I took a really bad MCL injury as a purple belt, and it's really been. If I'm honest, I need to probably get surgery.
I mean, recovery from that kind of stuff is it's a bit of a journey from everybody that I know that has had to go through it.
It's horrible. Yeah, I couldn't close my right leg for like 2 years.
Oh,
like you know how you start from your knees?
Yeah,
I couldn't shut my leg.
How is it now?
It's good as long as it's not hit.
Okay, I got you.
You know, I use a brace. If you don't fall on it with your knee or your shin doesn't bang against it, it's fine.
Okay.
It also impacted my training because I became very tentative, right?
Oh, no doubt. You start second guessing everything.
Right. You know what I mean? So it's affected my game in that way. But then, my instructor is very patient with me, and he knows I'm a G and that I'll fight anybody whenever if I have to. I normally, when I compete, I either lose on points or I win by submission.
Right.
I've never won by advantage, and I've never won on points. I either tap you out or you keep trying to tap me and it doesn't happen.
I hear you.
I don't like getting outpointed, but I'll risk it.
Yeah.
If I think I can tap you.
Yeah.
And I'll let you take a dominant position and wait for you to slip.
Yeah.
Now that I'm just kind of focused on getting my black and rebuilding my game. So I train at Heroes Martial Arts in San Jose in the gi, and I train at Denny Procopos in no gi.
Okay.
And that's how I roll.
Did you start or continue training in no gi from the get go, or is that something you picked up later?
So when Half used to start, when he started Mountain View, which was his first school. Anytime he showed a position, he always showed no gi or / MMA strengths and weaknesses from what he was showing.
Okay.
So if he showed like a side control thing, he would say, okay, this is a side control. We're going to go here, grab the collar and do the choke. Now, if you're on the street, the guy can still do this or this. So be mindful, right?
Right.
However, you also have this striking option. And so I always was raised having knowledge of it all.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I was doing leg locks in like 2000.
Okay.
The 10th Planet style, however, Denny is my boy, and like it's deep because even though the 10th Planet style, especially, the rubber guard is known for all that flexibility, and I do yoga.
Yeah.
So I'm not inflexible. I'm actually for being 50, I'm pretty flexible.
Nice.
Actually, I don't need to do all of that to learn the 10th Planet system. I don't really use rubber guard. I just use a standard closed guard, but the rest of my game is evolving in 10th Planet and leg lock stuff, and it's cool, man.
Yeah, no doubt.
How did you meet Imam Dawood?
So I have yet to meet him in person, but what's interesting was I was introduced to who he was by one of my teachers, and one of my, I guess I can call him a colleague, is so in Dallas, one of the projects I'm working on, when I first came to Houston, the project was on something called Quran Revolution, right? It was basically this whole thing about, with a lot of folks, they're just have like they're Muslim, but they really don't know how to engage with the Quran itself. So I was working with Wissam through Al Maghrib Institute as a collaborative project to launch this initiative. So in those engagements, Wissam was telling me about this gentleman by the name of Imam Dawood, who, in terms of the thing that he was mentioning was his outdoorsiness, right? He goes out camping. He does. So I was like, all right, let me look him up on Instagram, and so I followed him. But then around the same time I got into Gracie Baja doing the jiu-jitsu stuff, he was starting, maybe just shortly after that, he started his jiu-jitsu journey. And Wissam was also doing his jiu-jitsu journey in Dallas as well. So I guess like because we all kind of started in the gi style kind of around the same time, just, I guess observing from afar and then engaging digitally. But then, I guess Imam Dawood, the kind of individual that he is, the content that he's putting out there, I just found it inspirational, right? And I just, it's
very.
For sure. So, and then, that's when I was just like, hey, you know what? I'm going to make a video just for him. Because one of the things that he posted. Dope, yeah. So it was interesting because like I went out for my first jiu-jitsu gi tournament. I got disqualified because I missed weight by like a few pounds. And so that's
right, but you went anyway, right? You went in anyway just to weigh in.
Yeah, just because everybody, even the professor was just like, just come anyway, right? You might get disqualified, but just show up anyway. And so, and I did. And I remember when I showed up, I just felt like I was there, I did it. But at the same time, there was like this, like, I guess internal embarrassment and internal disappointment for like, it was only a few pounds. Right. And, and I remember afterwards, everybody was going to go out to eat at some restaurant or something. And I was just like, I couldn't bring myself to go. Right. I just literally went to Mod Pizza, grabbed myself a Feel Better slice, or one of those pies.
Right.
And then I just went home. Right. And then I remember Imam Dawood, he actually DM'd me and he was just kind of asking about my experience of, weighing in and the process and whatnot. And so I kind of shared with him what I experienced and what some of the things he may want to be cognizant of. And so when he went in and he shared his story about him showing up, but like I guess his competitor didn't show. And so he won by default.
Yeah.
Right. But that whole point about like showing up is the battle. Right.
Yep.
And I was just like, that is so true, man. Like that for me was like, I didn't realize it would cause I got there. I didn't realize it would take courage to step on that scale, knowing I was going to be disqualified.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when it was just like,
that's G stuff right there.
Yeah.
That's G stuff for real, bro. All right. Cool. You ready to do this?
Let's do this.
Here we go. All right. Let me start my mic up. Give me 1 second as it starts. And then, I'm really juiced about this, man. I appreciate you, man. This is going to be fun.
No doubt.
This is going to be real fun. Peace to the planet. You know what it is. Adisa Banjoko, Bishop of Hip Hop. This is how we do it, man. This is Bishop Chronicles. And I always tell you, man, I'm always bringing you the freshest people from all over the planet. And today we're going to have a really interesting and cool talk with my man, Bilal Khan from Strength Dojo on YouTube. And he makes amazing, cool videos that deal with jiu-jitsu, that deal with preparing, that deal with positioning, that deal with training. And so we're going to talk a bit about what that means in his journey in jiu-jitsu so far. And so, Bilal Khan, thank you for being on Bishop Chronicles today.
Thanks for having me, man. It's an honor.
So talk to me about Strength Dojo. What school do you train at?
Sure.
What did jiu-jitsu do for you, and how did that bring Strength Dojo into a reality?
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so strength. So I guess for me, martial arts has always been a part of my identity in a way, right? So my dad put me in martial arts when I was a kid, partly because I was getting bullied and, whatnot, getting beat up. And so I remember I complained to my dad. It's like, you got to talk to the principal. You got to talk to the teachers. This is not cool. And my dad was like, ain't no son of mine gonna be bullied. So instead of talking to the principal, he put me in martial arts classes. So first 2 years I did Taekwondo, but then we moved. And then he put me in another school called Master Glacier's Karate. It was kind of like a hybrid martial arts school where they kind of did like a mix between Kyokushin karate and Taekwondo. And after several years of that, Mark Glazier, the owner of those chain of schools, sold it to Tiger Showman. And so we all ended up having to start all over again. And Tiger Showman kind of came in with their own MMA system. And this is before anybody knew what MMA was. I didn't even know what MMA was.
Right.
All I knew was that we're learning karate. And in karate, the way that they kind of taught it was like, all right, you come in with your Kyokushin, self-defense and sparring. And then they brought in some Muay Thai techniques, to go more advanced into sparring. And then they brought in grappling, right? I didn't know what jiu-jitsu was either. I just knew that, it's karate on the ground, right? And so,
right.
and it was only later that I learned that like, we were actually doing all these different arts. It's not just karate. And so I did that. Like, I think when Tiger Showmans came into the picture, I think I was in like 7th grade, and I stayed with it until I was into college. And when
crazy, especially because like Kyokushin is, bro, that's weird. Still body shots.
Dude, it was tough training, man. But the thing that I remember, like, we would have to condition ourselves where, we can take kicks to the leg, we can take body shots, to the point where it almost pretty much kind of became a party trick for me. Especially in high school, where I could be like, hit me as hard as you want, and I could take it, right? And so people, friends would line up, be like, yo, let's see how hard we can hit him in the gut. And the best part is, most people, when they're untrained, like, they don't know to hit somebody guy in the solar plexus, and you can knock their wind out. But everybody would be like, I'm going to hit him so hard in the gut. And it was always one of those fun things where it's just like, hey, I can just stand there and take it. But it wasn't until I think it was later in high school where so I played football in high school as well. It was funny though, because the school that I was in, we were a Division I school, but we were like second from the bottom. Right. And so, but being on the football team gave you some notoriety within the school.
Of course.
But the thing is, even within the football team, you still had your own kind of cliques. And I remember I got into it with one of the Korean kids. And now apparently this Korean kid knew a little bit of judo and grappling, and we're kind of going back and forth, and the dude literally puts me on my back. And I'm like, what happened here, right? And so later I'm talking to Sensei, I'm like, yo, this happened. Like, I'm not sure, like what could have happened here. And he's like, yeah, you know what? We're going to be covering grappling soon. So like, because of the advancement within the curriculum, you didn't get into grappling until you were like a brown belt. And that was like year 6 within your training. So, once we got into the grappling part, I just kind of fell in love with it. Cause for me, it was almost like it nullified the necessity to hit people. Right. And at the same time, I felt like
beautiful people. I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah. And not only did it do that, but at the same time, I felt like I was a lot more safe from being hit as well, because of the whole idea of distance management and whatnot. So, and so that's part of it. Now what's interesting though, is like, when I went to college, there was a couple of guys who did jujitsu, and that's when I became familiar with. In fact, my first run-in with jujitsu was when I went to. I was taking a seminar in California, in LA, and after the seminar, the seminar was taking place at I think it was at UCLA, and then after the seminar, there's a bunch of guys that are rolling in the grass. And I'm like, oh, they're grappling, right? and the two of them going, and one guy is in mount, and he's and I'm like, yo, like, you know, do the shoulder lock, put your hands like this and whatnot. And the guy's like, you know, jujitsu? I'm like, I don't know what that is, but you know, but this is a shoulder lock, and this is a chicken wing, and you know, this is how you get on top of the guy.
Right.
And so it's like, yo, that's jujitsu. I'm like, no, man, this is karate. And so yeah. So again, like for me, like I was just ignorant to the art. I just knew what I knew. But then later, when I went to college, I was rolling with some guys, and they introduced me to what jujitsu is like an art. And I'm like, oh, okay, so it's like it's a form of grappling, okay. And but the thing that always struck me was that whenever I would roll with somebody who did jujitsu purely, if they were a blue belt or higher, I'd always get submitted, right? And so, and partly because within the school that I was training, we did grappling, but we were allowed to do a little bit of striking, right? Like, how do you get somebody to open the guard? You hit them a few times a little bit, right? And the guard loosens up.
That's how I pass. I pass.
Right? And so like once you can't hit the person, I'm like, ugh, what do I do? Right? And it's just like, okay, there's a can opener. It's like, and then later it's just like, oh, you can't do a can opener. That's like a neck crank and stuff. And I'm like, and? It's like, that's against the rules. I'm like, what rules? What are you talking about? Right. And so, but later, and that's when I kind of like realized, you know what? I really want to get more into this jujitsu stuff. But I came down to when I left Jersey and I got a job in DC. I was looking for schools to train at, and my first instinct was, let me see if there's a Tiger Showman school in DC, and there wasn't. And so I was like, well, let me also look at other opportunities. And in fact, I found a school that did jujitsu and that also did Krav Maga. It was like a mixed school, but you had to choose the program. You couldn't just you could do both, but like nobody did both, right? Because they're all at the same time. Right. So now here's the thing. Again, I'm not familiar to the history of jiu-jitsu at this time, but this school was run by a gentleman by the name of Pedro Sawyer. And
Pedro Sauer?
Sours. And so and he's based out of Northern Virginia. And so he had a Northern Virginia school and this school in Rockville, Maryland. I think one of his students was running it, but he'd be there every now and then. Now, in my mind, when I was introduced to jiu-jitsu, I was like, jiu-jitsu is Gracie. If there's jiu-jitsu and it's not Gracie, it's not jiu-jitsu, it's fake jiu-jitsu. It was like, and so there was like this whole branding thing that was kind of like thrown into me. So I was like, oh, okay, so it's not a Gracie jiu-jitsu, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'll just go straight to Krav Maga. And so I did Krav Maga for about a year, and super beneficial. Like one of the things I took away from it was just the idea of pressure testing. And it was interesting because I got to see how much of the karate and self-defense stuff that I learned was actually effective for me in that kind of stress-based scenario. And I would say maybe less than half of it was for me still like to which I was responsive on a reflexive level, right? Which to me was super eye-opening. I was just like, man, like I can do all the training I want in a controlled setting, but if I'm put to the test in a stress-based scenario, like it's not the same as in a sparring match where like you're in it consensually with another individual to duke it out. But like if you're in a situation where like you don't know when the attack is coming, and that's how they set up the test, is like they tire you out, and then they, at least in this school, when they did their testing, is just like, okay, you know what, we're gonna start. But then if it was your day to test, like they'd attack you. And you'd have to see how you'd hold up, or they'd set you up with that full body gear, and then from there, like you would have to like really do your best to hit, because a lot of times people don't know it, but if you're not striking appropriately while practicing, then you're not going to strike appropriately when you're in a stressed scenario. And so
yeah, that's fair. Totally fair.
And so that's one of the things I was appreciative about my experience with Krav Maga, of like, okay, you know what? These are the things that I was made aware of in terms of the holes in my practice. And then when I came down to Houston, One of the things was I moved to an area called Clear Lake, which is a southeast corner, and the best way to describe it is that it's where old people go to die. It's basically Florida light, and it's for real, man. It's like people got their fishing boats, and when it rains, the gators and cottonmouth snakes, they come out. So, and you got geckos everywhere. So
I can't hang. I'm too Californian for any of that madness. I'm just telling you.
dude, you're talking to a Northeast urban kid who's been introduced to. I'm like, where am I?
Hilarious.
Man, so, but the thing that I didn't realize was like, all right, you know what? I want to get back into martial arts. I'm looking for Gracie. I'm looking for jujitsu. And I find a school in Houston proper. And I'm like, and I go in, I check it out. And then I realize, oh, this place is so far away from where I live. It would be like an hour plus drive just to go here. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to put it in the back of my mind as a bucket list. It's like, all right, you know, make it a point to move to Houston proper and then check back at this location. And it wouldn't, it was 2 years from that point that actually happened. But when I did go back to that school and sign up, it was a Gracie Baja school. I found out that there was a Gracie Baja school down the street from where I was living in the swampy areas, and it was run by Professor Dracolino, who's apparently, yeah. I was like, oh my God, for 2 years, I could have been learning from this legend. I didn't know he was a legend until later, but I was just like, wow. Yeah. So, but I gotta say, I'm happy to be where I am because it's more like the culture that I was exposed to in Tiger Showman's with like the whole, because it's the school that I'm at right now. It's more of an MMA school. They have jiu-jitsu, they got Muay Thai. In fact, they have a UFC fighter there too. His name is Danger Caged. They have it's like that full-on martial arts school, whereas at least to my understanding, I could be wrong, but most of the Gracie Bajas are jiu-jitsu specific schools, at least from what I've seen for the most part. So yeah, that's my kind of story in a nutshell in terms of how I got introduced to it and what and one thing I forgot to mention though, there was in terms of through this journey, like the question, like what happened in the 2 years that I was in the southeast corner of Houston before I moved to Houston proper. One of the things I realized is like, you know what, I should take this opportunity to get into better shape. And one of the things, now the thing is, when I was in DC, I picked up Bruce Lee's Art of Jeet Kune Do. And in that book, Bruce Lee was talking about how anybody who considers themselves a martial artist, they have to train in the technique of martial art, and they need to also train in, you know, physical fitness and training. And when I read that, I did not understand because in the philosophy of, you know, Tiger Showman's is like you're doing martial arts and you're doing physical fitness and strength training, all that. It was all built into the curriculum. I'm like, how can you separate physical fitness and strength training from martial arts? But then when I started seeing a lot of other martial arts schools, I was like, oh my God, most of these schools are just martial arts technique focused. And I started realizing like, wow, there's a lot of fat black belts. Right? And
dude, isn't that a crazy thing when you look at other martial arts? Like, that is one of the craziest things. Like, for me, you know, like, I'll just be real. Like, one of the guys who's been on this show a lot has been Dr. Pete, and he is an old school Kyokushin guy from New York. You know what I mean? Like, not fat, healthy, can't harm you. You know what I'm saying? And it's weird how it wasn't until I got into jiu-jitsu that you realize that most of the guys who run around claiming to be martial arts masters with these huge guts are just coasting on something from way back because it's not real.
And I think part of it is the fact that when you take the pressure testing sparring element out of the martial art, then there's just like, there's no reason to stay fit. at least on a social level, right?
Real.
And so,
right, because you're just kind of hanging out and tell people to punch in the air, you know?
Yeah. So I actually ended up, pursuing physical fitness and personal training, a certification program through a British company called Shredded by Science. At least at the time, they were called Shredded by Science. Now I think they're called the Personal Training Collective. And so from that, I think it was like that kind of was like halfway through my fitness journey, which started in DC, because I was 25 years old when I was in DC, and I was just like, 10 years from now, I want to be like the best ever, right? Because if I hit 35 and 40, like I better be like it's like anything that's downhill from there has got to be like a really like, in order for me to fall to a low area, I'd have to fall a long way. So therefore, let me climb as high as I can. And that's when I started learning about, the science of mobility, science of strength training, biological life cycle within like your myofascial tissues and your blood work and all of that, foot movement, hip movement, all of that. So, and that is what kind of gave birth to the Strength Dojo YouTube channel. So I was just like, you know what? I want to document what I'm learning, and at the same time, because at the one of the things that I was pursuing, just kind of like as a bucket list, was specific strength standards that were brought to my attention. That like if you meet these strength standards, then you could dominate whatever sport you put your that you commit to, right? Like, and those strength standards essentially being, can you lift double your body weight using your legs? Can you lift 1.5 or 1.25 times your body weight using your upper body, push and pull? I.e., in my case, can I deadlift 400 plus pounds? Can I squat 300 plus pounds? And so I was like, oh, great. Now I have a clear, measurable objective that I can.
That is crazy knowledge right now. My brain is spinning.
Yeah, so that was just like, I was like, I got something that I can hit, right? And so I started just tracking my progress. I got myself a coach. There was a book that was very insightful for me, was Man 2.0, Engineering the Alpha by Adam Bornstein and John Romanello, which like I was introduced to the idea of hormone optimization, like natural hormone optimization within the body, and phased-based programming. And wait, hold on. What is that? Talk to me. Okay, so what is phase-based programming, or what is hormone optimization?
Yes, hormone optimization.
Okay, sure. So the thing is, so just to put it on a basic level, right? The thing is that a lot of times people think, all right, in order for me to, let's say I want to burn fat and I want to build muscle, right? The thing is, yes, there is a simple factor to it: calories in, calories out. Whatever your target weight is, just add a 0. That's how many calories you need to consume. But even within all of that, there are certain hormones within the body that regulate and determine, your energy, your ability to absorb food. Some things like insulin, right? Insulin is a very basic hormone. People get the itis after lunch because they ate too much sweet or too much carbohydrates, and suddenly they have a sugar low or whatever. And so understanding what these major hormones are and how they affect your body, how they affect your energy, and how they affect weight loss and muscle building, that's what John Romanello kind of like hit on, and to me was just such an eye opener. And it not only was an eye-opener because of like how effective it was knowing this, but within my family, genetically, diabetes is common, right? And so it was so it was just like,
it's starting to pop off in my family too, bro. I need this knowledge.
Yeah, so it was just like, you know what? And the thing that also was fascinating to me, as a Muslim especially, is that the book opens up in terms of the programming, telling you to fast for 30 days. And within the 30 days of fasting, we're talking about 16-hour fast with an 8-hour window of opportunity to eat. And I was just like, I just did Ramadan when I opened that book, right? I just finished Ramadan. I'm like, yo, I'm ready to go. And so, but the reason for that was, the fasting itself, the 30 days, was something that would reset your body's insulin sensitivity factors. Like there's a hormone in the body called ghrelin that the best way to understand it is that it affects how your body burns fat, and at the same time, it's like it's also the kind of hormone that, think of it like a gremlin in your stomach whenever you get hungry, but that's basically your body responding to your natural cycle of how often you eat. And in terms of how much you eat, how often. So there's all of these factors that kind of, like, again, these are optimizations that have a positive effect on your health if you understand them. But like, that was something that really opened me up. And when I went through the training of the personal training stuff, in terms of certification content, like, one of the things I learned about was just like, okay, there is a certain process that needs to be understood and adhered to when you're dealing with yourself, or dealing with others, depending on, are they in a category that is general population? And what I understood that as is people who are not necessarily athletes, right? Then you got people who are your bodybuilders. You've got your strength type folks who are trying to lift a lot but not in high volume. And so the training methodologies and the training processes is different. And this is where this is where I came to understand phased-based training, where, because the human body is so good at adapting to stimuli, right? Whether that stimuli be drugs or be caffeine or be physical activity, right? If you started walking to work every day, or you started riding your bike to work every day, yeah, you'll notice a change in your physique and whatnot for maybe a couple of weeks, but then you'll notice that you're gonna hit a plateau because your body's adapted. It's the same thing with martial arts. It's like, yeah, you might see some weight loss for the first month when you get into it, but then it's like one, you get better at the art, so you become more efficient, so you're losing less energy, and at the same time, you've also adapted to the activity itself. So that's why phased-based approach to exercise and strength training is integral to continued growth and development within the human body itself, within the context of knowing whatever your like biological individual life cycle is, and to kind of put that into context in simple terms. And this to me was very inspiring, and I found that other people found it inspiring too, because it set expectations of how long you should be able to see the results of something. Of like, for example, if you're dieting, how do you know that diet is working? Well, the number one thing that the diet is going to affect is your blood work, right? Now, so the body replaces all of its blood cells every, 90 to 100 days. So check your blood work beforehand, and then 3 months later. That's how you know if your diet is doing you good, right? At the same time, right, your myofascial tissue, which is your interconnective tissue within the body that kind of keeps your bones, tendons, ligaments, skin, muscles all together, it's designed to adapt to whatever position you put your body into most commonly, right? Which is, in our case, 90-degree angles, right? Sitting at the car. So we become very immobile in our hips, sometimes in our shoulders. But like, if you want to move the body into a better position and have it stay at a better position, the cells within the myofascial tissue replace themselves every 7 to 8 months. And so if you're looking to improve that kind of hip mobility, that's a place to start. Same thing with muscles, right? Muscles, they replace themselves every 2 to 3 years. So so if you're looking for muscular change, get into a program and commit to going through programming within your strength training body development for at least a couple of years, right? And so when you see that, and same thing with bones, right? Even the bones replace themselves every 7 to 10 years. So literally every decade, you have a whole new body, essentially.
That's crazy. I can't wait to get my next new body. I hope it's fresh.
Yeah, no doubt. Like, people talk about, is like, oh, you know what? Like, this is my birthday suit or whatever. It's like, no, dude, your birthday suit died a long time ago. Now you're just getting ready for your death day suit.
So, dude, tell people about. Okay, so I'll tell people about the strength Dojo videos that I really like. I really like your one about Ramadan because obviously I'm Muslim, right? And so, like, when to train, like, I think, like, as jiu-jitsu has grown in the Muslim community, which it has really rapidly over the years, because a lot of people don't know that the Prophet Muhammad was a grappler, and that in the Muslim community all over the world, grappling has a rich tradition.
No doubt. I mean, grappling's been people don't understand this. Striking martial arts are, in fact, the anomaly. Right? Striking martial arts developed as a means of going against those, it was developed as for those people who were oppressed, right? The Okinawans against the Japanese, right? The Koreans against so on. So it's just like, it was always, but the default, especially within a martial nature, it's been some form of wrestling or grappling. Every culture has it.
Yep. Everyone, man.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, during Ramadan, what I've always done is I've still found a way to train, but I would normally just drill.
Right.
Like I would not spar. I wouldn't spar. And so I found that particular video to be awesome. I loved your Berimbolo video.
With Coach Osama?
Yeah, that was great. That was a great video. That was such a great video. And I mean, there's a lot of good ones. There's one that I really liked, the filming of the open mat.
Yeah.
At your school,
Yeah, with Professor Hunter and Pedro.
I encourage people to follow Strength Dojo. You're going to get a lot more than just jiu-jitsu, but the jiu-jitsu is going to be fresh, I promise you.
And I think that's part of what was the reason was, like, when I first started jiu-jitsu, one of the things I was starting to look for on YouTube was like, hey, has anybody documented their journey? Right. And so I came across one dude who started it documenting, but then he just kind of fell off. And then I came across another dude who I guess documented himself getting his black belt. And then he kind of gave a lot of advice in terms of what he learned along the way. But I was like, I haven't seen anybody who's like from the start to finish, like, documented that. And I was just like, you know what? I mean, like, it'd be cool. Let me do it. And I think it'd be one of those things where, one, it'll be fun. Two, I get to share. Three, it's easier to document than to create content. So, it's like makes tons of sense. Yeah, because it's like, you know what? I just got to show up my camera and shoot, right? And then at the same time, it's just like, if there's something good, then I'll put it out there. If not, then whatever. It'll just go back into the archive.
Yeah, no, man, it's fantastic. So, outside of your YouTube channel, how can people get a hold of you?
I mean, generally, I tell, this is funny because whenever I work with prospective clients, they're like, hey, you got a business card? I'm like, look, you can find me on social at Bilal Khan Social, right? So BELALKHAN Social. And that's across the board, right? That's on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Like Strength Dojo is my fitness, like jiu-jitsu specific stuff, but like the Bilal Khan Social on YouTube. There's another channel that just kind of do like marketing and video stuff in terms of what my my bill paying trade is, for the most part. And also on LinkedIn, like, just if they search my name, they'll come across me. But yeah.
Excellent. That is beautiful. So before we go, do you have any parting advice for white belts that are new to jiu-jitsu and are maybe frustrated with where they feel they're at, or what advice do you have for white belts, period, a beginner in jiu-jitsu? Sure.
So
just starting out.
I would share, learn to recover, right? The more you learn how to recover, the more you'll be able to do jiu-jitsu. And I understand that people at different ages, their ability to recover and the time it takes to recover is going to vary. If you're younger, you're a high school student, you're a college student, you could probably go do jiu-jitsu every day, right? Even if you're not an athlete, you could probably still jiu-jitsu every day. But if you're in your 30s and 40s and whatnot, like, I know for me, like, I tried to see how many days I could do jiu-jitsu back to back. I got like 4 days. And then like I just had
Right.
to take a day off, and then I went back in. I did 3 more days, and I was like, you know what? I'm taking 4 days off.
Yeah, and you gotta rest. You gotta rest, man.
Yeah.
Like being like a mad animal is different, man. One of the things, and I'm glad you mentioned this because one of the things that I noticed over the years, right? Like, and I'm a guy who, if I'm being fully honest, like I should have had my black belt a long time ago. You know what I
Right.
mean? But I've been really transparent about the fact that I would train and stop and train and stop and train and stop.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
big deal. I'm at peace with it. Right? I'm at peace with it. But one of the things while I've sometimes lay up at night going, damn, dog, you could have been a black belt years ago. What are you doing? On the flip side, I've seen a lot of people become mad savages and burn out their knees,
No
burn
doubt.
out their
No
back,
doubt. Yeah.
burn out their shoulders, burn out their hips. And like, yeah, they were a black belt who everyone feared until the 2 years after they got their black belt, and now they're just limping around the mall. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, the idea is like, when I started this, Helio Gracie was alive, and I met him.
Okay.
And I saw Helio in his gi. I saw him playing with Hiron, who was a green belt then. I saw him, he come over, hey, let me show you this wrist lock escape and blah, blah. You know what? I want to be like that.
No doubt. No
Right?
doubt.
I don't want to be the fearsome black belt who everyone feared for 3 to 5 years and then just like sat in the corner because he couldn't actually function, man.
It's not even
like let the marathon be what it is, man. Let the marathon be what it is. Enjoy the run.
and here's the thing that I have in my mind, right? I started jujitsu when I realized I had been a black belt from I earned my black belt in karate, and I had been a black belt longer than it took me to get it. Right? And I was just like, you know what? I am looking forward to that day in jiu-jitsu when I've had my jiu-jitsu black belt for as long as it took me to get it. However long it takes me to get it, right? But for me, that's going to be the achievement, is that I've had my black belt as long as it took me to get there.
Yeah, man.
Right?
No, that is beautiful, man. Man, thank you so much for being on Bishop Chronicles. I appreciate you. Always know whenever you visit the Bay, bro, like we have got to kick it. We've got to hook up with Imam Daoud and get some training in and get some acai bowls cracking. You know what I'm saying?
No doubt, man. I actually had my first acai bowl last week, and I understand. Like, okay, I see what this is, man. It's like ice cream, dude. Fruit.
It's so good.
Yeah.
In fact, you know what? This is Thanksgiving week coming up. I'ma just mob on acai the whole time. I ain't even tripping off turkey. I ain't tripping off roast beef. I ain't tripping off. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go out of my way to have insane acai all Thanksgiving week. That's what I'm doing.
I hear you,
That's
man.
All right. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. It was very enjoyable.